Why Ole Miss is going to beat Wake Forest? We give you the answer key before Saturday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. Today, we are breaking down Ole Miss versus Wake Forest and that matchup, and I've got two really key reasons why Lane Kiffin and Jaxson Dart are going to win their first road game of the season. First, it all starts with a fast offensive start, obviously. If Dart, Henry Parrish, Trey Harris, Juice Wells, etc. can get going early, Ole Miss will kind of control the pace. The second factor is a big day from the defensive line. If Walter Nolan and J.J. Pegues can penetrate and disrupt Wake Forest's quirky offense, it's game over. We'll tell you what we mean by that in a bit. But don't forget to check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC, Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more takes across the SEC. They have great perspectives. Thanks for listening, and let's get going. Today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers and insiders that make this show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This is my favorite episode of the week. I love the Why Ole Miss Wins episode. Mainly because it's a fun thought exercise to go to before a game. And B, it's kind of the reactions of the opposing fans. Now, Ole Miss is playing Wake Forest this week, so it's not going to be the biggest fan base that Ole Miss is going against. But the Why Ole Miss Wins episode this week is pretty cut and dry. We talked to Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC about the Wake Forest Demon Deacons yesterday and completely broke this down. And what he told me and what he said influenced my decision a great deal. We talked about keys to the Wake Forest game. We talked about what we're watching for in this game. And we talked about some people that may go off and how certain players may affect other players to allow them to go off as well. We've kind of covered this game over the course of the week. So here are the two main keys that we are going to be looking at. It's going to be a fast start, first of all. Ole Miss needs to get off the field in a hurry. Here's what to watch for. Do a fast start and set the tone with tempo and energy. If you allow Wake Forest to hang around and get confidence in the second half, you could have a dogfight. Wake Forest upsetting people, which they've done pretty consistently in the Dave Clawson era because they are a very well-coached, very good schematic football team. If they get confidence and believe you're going to beat you, they have the ability and the know-how and all that stuff to close it out, and they will. I think a year ago they were able to win a game just like this, maybe against Clemson. Ole Miss's defensive line, number 2, will stop the slow mesh RPO with tackles for loss, and tackles for loss will reign. This is an Ole Miss team that has 25 tackles for loss through 2 games. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the red zone defense of the Ole Miss defense and how that's going to be beneficial. And Ole Miss will play clean on the road and avoid the traps that are there. This game is fairly synonymous to the Georgia Tech game in 2022, except the fact that Ole Miss's football team is a lot better than that team was. Ole Miss won that game 42-0. They did it completely balanced game, scoring 21 points and a half. But that was the first road game of the season against an ACC team that was in the bottom half of that league. A lot of synonymous things are happening this week as well. But we're going to start off with a fast start, and it's important. And fast start has been the phrase du jour this season for Ole Miss football with Jaxson Dart, who has started with more incompletions or less incompletions than he has touchdowns accounted for. He has 8 touchdowns accounted for in 2024 and only 7 incompletions, 47 of 54, 795 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, absolutely in control. They do a fantastic job schematically doing stuff. And like I said, I have the theory about the helmet communication and why Ole Miss is probably ahead of the curve on that with what they're doing, because Jaxson Dart had 5 games of over 70% completion percentage in his first 2 seasons. He's at 87% through 2 games this year. That can't just be a year 3 performance. There has to be something else there. And I think the helmet communication, Ole Miss has figured out how to use that in a way that really helps out Jaxson Dart, because they've been working on this through the spring, through the early part of the fall. They have a plan for it, and they have a really good coaching staff that is going to be good at breaking down film. One of his weapons is going to be Trey Harris. The other one is going to be Juice Wells. Trey Harris has 17 catches, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. Juice Wells, 8 catches, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. The reason this is important in this game will be, honestly, for Henry Parrish. Now, Ole Miss is going to complete some passing yards because statistically, the worst unit on the field potentially will be the Wake Forest secondary. They struggled against Virginia a week ago. Virginia was able to erase a 13-point deficit in the fourth quarter in Winston-Salem against an offense and a pass offense that is nowhere near as explosive as what Wake Forest is about to see. Wake Forest opened up with North Carolina A&T. They struggled a little bit in that game. This is not an overly great Wake Forest team. Like I said, I think they were picked 15th or 16th out of a 17-team ACC league. And all of this is setting up for a fast start. Whenever Ole Miss is going into a situation with a secondary that they think they can pick on, they come out slinging the ball around. And I think that's going to happen. And because Wake Forest is going to have to sink back to work to keep Ole Miss from having those explosive 1 and 2 and 3 play drives, that's going to soften up the middle of the defense and make Wake Forest's defensive line, which is their best part of their defense, into a little bit more ineffective unit. And you're going to see Henry Parrish go off as well. Henry Parrish last week at 168 yards for the season. He's averaging nearly 10 yards a carry, 22 carries, 205 yards, 4 touchdowns for Parrish right now. Ole Miss is at a good spot for a fast start. Now, Ole Miss is averaging, 64 points per game right now, and they are giving up 1.5 points a game. They're averaging winning games 64 to 1.5. That is what the average is this season. And there is some fact attributable to that with who Ole Miss has played at the beginning of the season. Furman, who's a very good FCS program, and Middle Tennessee, who last year took top 10 Missouri to the end. And they are really good, an air raid team at throwing the ball. Ole Miss had some bust, but they still only got 3 points in that game. I do think Ole Miss is going to surrender their first touchdown of the season in Winston-Salem. I do think that's going to happen, but I think it's going to be a little bit too little too late, because the fast start that Jaxson Dart and those receivers and that running back is going to get off of is going to blitzkrieg Wake Forest. And you're going to see a 28-3 type score, 28-7 type score in the first half at the end. And that's going to eliminate that confidence building up. Ole Miss has played Vandy every season except for this one, going back to like 1894 or something like that. And Vandy, they in their head know how to handle it. And they get into the second half. It's a close game in that. And then all of a sudden they start to believe, and Vandy becomes a problem for Ole Miss in that situation. They have become over the years a problem for Ole Miss, probably more so than any other team on their schedule. And a lot of that has to do with confidence and the belief that they can get it done. Ole Miss has to work to prevent that from happening against Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, South Carolina. If you allow them to believe that they're going to win, you're going to be in for a dogfight, because those are Division I scholarship athletes as well. So I think Ole Miss is going to get off to a fast start. I think their script is going to be absolutely fantastic. I think Juice Wells and Trey Harris, besides having a big day going against that secondary that is potentially the worst unit on the field, according to Kenton Gibbs, going against the Ole Miss wide receiver unit, who's potentially the best unit in the country, that could be problematic, and that's going to force Wake Forest to protect that unit, which is going to open up the run defense and make their defensive line a little bit less effective. Really interesting stuff. When we come back, pretty great. Wake runs a quirky RPO type offense, and I am just absolutely convinced that the interior of the offensive line, our defensive line for Ole Miss is going to have a really big day. Stick around for that. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available for U.S. customers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure you're finding the right people for the job. Professionals that can help take your business to the next level. That's why I'm excited to share how LinkedIn can help you find those people. That's pretty cool indeed. It makes a world of difference. The platform helps you reach people that you might not even find using other means. Sometimes the best candidates aren't actively looking for jobs, but if they're open to the right opportunity, that's where LinkedIn Jobs really shines. It's amazing how easy it is to post a job. Within 24 hours, you're likely to get a qualified candidate. In fact, 86% of small businesses on LinkedIn get a solid candidate within just a day. LinkedIn just isn't another job board. It's a place where you can connect to professionals who might not actively be looking elsewhere, but they're perfect for that perfect role. That's huge because over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit the other job sites. So if you're looking to hire like a professional, head to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege and post your job for free. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job and find the right people faster. Terms and conditions apply. College football season is back, and it's not too late to catch up on this weekend's squad shows on the Locked On Family and Network. Go to Locked On College Football to see all of them. Last night, we had all the SEC games, and we talked about the big games of the weekend with Chris Gordy and a couple guys that stopped by to do that. All the conferences do that. The SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12. It is absolutely fantastic. They talk about who has a chance to make the playoffs and which teams are causing chaos in their conference. Everything you need to know all in one place. So be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, Locked On College Football podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the first factor was the fast start. I genuinely think that Ole Miss has a chance to come out and just go. As long as they play clean, do not play sloppy, do not turn the ball over, avoid silly penalties, they're going to be able to move the ball, not necessarily at will, because I do think that Wake Forest is going to provide some resistance that they haven't seen from Middle Tennessee or Furman, but they're going to be able to score pretty quickly because Ole Miss is potentially the best offense in the entire country. And statistically right now, they are. The other factor in this game that I'm going to be looking at, and the reason I think Ole Miss is going to win, is the other really weak point that everybody's talking about for Wake Forest is the offensive line. And if you were to ask every Ole Miss fan who the best unit is on Ole Miss's team, they would say the defensive line. So you've got a relative weakness of Wake Forest going against Walter Nolan, J.J. Pegues, and all of those dudes, and that could be problematic. This is an Ole Miss defense. It's been hard to run the football on when you look at what's happening. I mean, you have Chris Paul. I mean, he's not a defensive lineman, but he's leading the team on tackles for loss. They're not necessarily getting to the quarterback, but we'll talk about that in just a second at the moment. You have J.J. Pegues, who 3 tackles for loss, doing a fantastic job. He's one of those interior defensive linemen that is going to be so important for to defeat the slow mesh play, that RPO, that service academy type play, to where if Ole Miss is not minding their P's and Q's, if they're not crossing their T's and dotting their I's, all of a sudden you can get burned. It's a very service academy type thing. It's just the way that play runs. And Ole Miss will need the penetration from a Walter Nolan, from a J.J. Pegues, from a Xavion Harris, from an Akello Stone, from a Jam Brown, from a William Eccles, whoever's in the interior of that defensive line. It's going to be important for them to get penetration, to not let them have one of those 3-second meshes to make plays, to where whenever you're coming up for your run fits, it's opening up more and more space directly behind you. And I talked to Kenton Gibbs yesterday from Locked On ACC, and he was talking about how Wake Forest will throw go routes off of RPOs. They are pretty RPO centric with the way they run their offense. So Ole Miss really has to be disciplined and play pretty well. And it all starts up front with those interior defensive linemen. This season for Ole Miss defense has been good. Now, the teeth gnashing after the last game was in the pass defense. And the pass defense, if you watch the season on Wednesday, Lane Kiffin saw that immediately. Now, Lane Kiffin said in his press conference that a lot of that stuff that he saw was probably better than he thought. It was a situation where mental busts were happening more than anything else, which, again, that could be a symptom of the kinder, gentler spring and fall, but we will see. This is a game where those busts don't need to happen. They need to make sure they're completely locked in this week, or Wake Forest will make them pay. The RPO, the slow mesh RPO being effective in them scoring points is the path for this game becoming uncomfortable for Ole Miss. 100%. The run game and everything. If Ole Miss does not get a handle on that slow mesh RPO, it could be problematic. Now, this season, Ole Miss's defense has been nails. It's almost impossible to run the ball on Ole Miss's defense to this point. Again, Furman, Middle Tennessee, I get it. It's going to step up. Wake Forest's running backs, they run like Le'Veon Bell. For those that are in NFL fans that are familiar with Le'Veon Bell when he was with Pittsburgh, it's very slow, very patient. Just like the slow mesh, they use the job of moving side to side and finding a hole. Again, it will be important to have penetration to avoid stuff breaking loose, especially whenever, you have some very aggressive people like Chris Pupal, very aggressive player. He wants to go into his run fits hard. He likes contact. He's a solid linebacker. He's like what you think a linebacker would look like, but you have to be careful against this slow mesh RPO. And as Kenton Gibbs said, you probably should just take a beat and just play completely assignment sound football, and you have the talent to kind of overwhelm what they are doing. Now, if you want to look at this, Ole Miss's red zone offense, they're scoring 92% of the time right now. Their red zone defense, they're only giving up points 33% of the time. This is any points. This is touchdown and field goal. So these numbers are dominant. Again, we'll couch that with what's going on in the first couple of games, but this is where you want to be. And specifically, the red zone defense, who against Middle Tennessee was borderline elite. Now, Middle Tennessee is not great, but this is the same Middle Tennessee that took Missouri to the wire last year and the year before beat Miami. So this is not like a weak sisters of the poor type team. They were unable to score touchdowns. Ole Miss is doing a good job of keeping people out of the end zone. They have not surrendered a touchdown this season. They've only given up 0 and 3 points through 2 games. We'll see once it goes on the road. This is going to be an important road game for Ole Miss and what can happen. This team in red zone defense is elite. They are not sacking the quarterback. They are 3rd in the country in tackles for loss, but they're like 30th in sacks. That isn't anything to worry about before we see people in the comments. That is the result of basically Furman and Middle Tennessee getting rid of the football in a hurry, and because they have to. And Nicholas Viato, what I forget his last name. I've already kind of brain dumped that a little bit. Could move around a little bit and avoid sacks. Princely Amamiellan has 4 quarterback hurries and a sack. They're going to be fine once they start scheming up offensive lines this will be the first game where they can really start to scheme up an offensive line, because these are guys that just straight up, if they know what's happening, they know how to scheme yards out of you. So Ole Miss is going to have to scheme against this offensive line, which means the sacks are going to come, which means that extra stuff is going to happen. But the impressive thing, the reason I bring that up, is being third in tackles for loss with 25 in the entire country without quarterback sacks attributing to that. That's an impressive stat. That is something we need to monitor. That means that when you run the ball, you're not getting back to the line of scrimmage. When Ole Miss is on in the early parts of the game, they're doing this, and it is hard to run the football on. It is absolutely nuts. I'm bringing up the team stats right now. The rushing yardage for the season, Ole Miss has given up 54 yards rushing over the course of the season, 27 yards a game. Average per rush, 1 yard per carry. That's nuts. 1 yard per carry is what Ole Miss has given up on the ground, which means they're getting some tackles for loss all the time. And if you take away the last couple of plays of the ball game over the crowd, whenever, I'm not talking about garbage time, I'm talking about garbage time. Middle Tennessee ran the ball twice for like 25 yards. Furman did. Middle Tennessee was probably 10 to 15. Ole Miss has probably given up over the course of 2 games in real football about 7 or 8 yards rushing. Unbelievably impressive by the Ole Miss defensive line. Now, the passing game, they're going to give up some yards. Everybody is. And once you get to this level, most everybody can scheme up some stuff. Once Ole Miss starts taking teams seriously, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean once they stop playing vanilla and their whole playbook is out there, potentially after Kentucky, after South Carolina, that level, I think it might look a little bit differently. And you'll see teams and Ole Miss get to the quarterback and teams kind of try to figure out what's going on. That's my thought on that. Now, when we come back, thank you for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We are going to put our final thoughts on the Wake Forest game. We're going to give our predictions. We're going to give the line updates, all of that good stuff. Stick around. Are you looking for an easy way to stay on top of your health and wellness goals? Factor's here to help you out with that. With no prep, no mess meals, you can fuel your body with chef-crafted, dietitian-approved dishes that fit your lifestyle. Whether you're aiming for Calorie Smart or Protein Plus or keto options, Factor has something for everyone. The best part, Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Perfect for even the busiest of schedules, especially on game day Saturdays, right? With 35 different meals and over 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll never get bored. Factor makes it easy to crush your wellness goals, offering premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon to keep your meals both healthy and delicious. Why spend hours in the kitchen when Factor meals can be ready in just 2 minutes? No shopping, prepping, or cleaning up. From breakfast to dessert, Factor has you covered with nutritious restaurant quality meals that make eating healthy a breeze. What are you waiting for? Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use the code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Let's finish up and do the finishing touches on Wake Forest. This is a game that Ole Miss they're going to be favored by 22. It'll come down a little bit before kickoff because everybody is worried about the weather at the moment. I expect this line to keep sinking like I talked with Kenton Gibbs yesterday. If the rain happens, the Ole Miss isn't scoring 41. It might be a game where they score 31. And the question at that point is, can Wake Forest score a touchdown? Can Wake Forest score 10 points? If that happens, Ole Miss can't cover. So I think everybody's betting on that. The last I saw, it was moving a little bit slower and looking better and better and better, but we need to see how it goes, and we'll pay attention to that on Friday as well. The over-unders is 63.5. My bet on that one and my gut feeling on that one is bet the under all day long on that one. To me, that looks like free money. I don't know what anybody says about that, but 63.5 points for the over-under. This is the situation where, okay, let's say Ole Miss can score 56. Let's say that Ole Miss can score 45, actually. That means that Wake Forest has to chip in, 17? Something like that? 45-17 would be a cover going over. I don't know if Wake Forest can score 17 points, but maybe they know something that I don't, because Wake Forest's opportunity and chance to make this game more competitive than we're expecting is getting off in the pass game and scoring points. It is not going to be about making the other team not score. So Ole Miss's offense needs to play clean. Jaxson Dart needs that fast start to get off. If that happens, Ole Miss will get out to a 28-3-ish halftime lead, and you're going to end up getting out of there like 41-10, something like that. That is what I'm thinking. If you want to look at my predictions right now, I went with 41-10. That is my thought process, and that is how I think this game is going to play out. If Ole Miss does those things that I talked about earlier in the show, this game will play out this way, but we'll see. This is the first road game for Ole Miss over the course of this season. It's always weird, and stuff can always happen in road games. And like Northern Illinois, nobody thought Northern Illinois was going to beat Notre Dame either. I think Notre Dame was a 28-point favorite or something in that game. College football is chaos. College football will always be chaos. You don't have definites on the sheets of paper. It's just the way this works. So we'll see exactly how this looks moving forward. We'll see if Ole Miss's defense kind of cleans up on the back end. Will they play assignment sound football? Because this game is 100% going to be about assignment sound. You're going to hear coaches, and they've probably said it all week, worry about your job. Don't try to do his job. All 11 needs to be doing their own job, taking care of what needs to happen, and you're going to have a ton of success. Wake's quarterback, Hank Bachmeier, is probably the best player, according to PFF. He's the only player on Wake Forest's offense that have graded out over 75 in the course of 2 weeks. And this is North Carolina A&T and Virginia, not exactly two juggernauts. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But this has been why Ole Miss should win against Wake Forest this Saturday. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on being the most comprehensive perspectives. That's why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, the Pac-12 or Pac-2 basically raided the Mountain West and took 4 teams. So now it's the Pac-6 for 2026. So we'll see how that looks. But Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link for Locked On College Football in the description down below, so you don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things college sports. Our texting program sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. We hate the trolls, right? Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college football and college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is also down in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, we're going to send you Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone. One more day.